There has been a discussion about whether it was right to say or to believe that all schools should go back, or primary schools should go back on the 1st of June. Specifically with the teachers, do you think that is right, that every school should adhere to a specific date, even if they are not ready to go back?
Announcing June 1st, many head teachers of primary schools said, we were not consulted on it. So how can we prepare, to reopen on the 1st of June? You think about the shared resources that children use, the shared resources that teachers use, photocopiers, computers, pens, corridors. There's so much to think about. But he just thought, let me make a blanket statement and make it out to be that, teachers need to be the heroes. They need to be the champions. We've been being the heroes.
No.
I don't think the risk is really there. I really don't think the risk is. I think people are very scared. And if you actually look at countries that didn't even have lockdown, the death rates are low, and it tends to be those that have already have underlying health conditions of very, very elderly. And I think that the risk has been over-egged in the mainstream media.
The issue is really complex, and I actually really appreciate it's actually, as much as a teacher, I think I can completely empathise with how parents are dealing with it, because we have contact with parents, but I think it's always different to hear from someone that's actually at home with 3 kids and saying, the novelty wears off after a few weeks. And as much as I think it is really important to get kids back in school as soon as possible, but actually it's as soon as it's safe. And I think that's been my biggest issue.
Hi, my name is Abisoye and welcome back to my channel. Since the 20th of March, most schools in the UK have been closed. But recently, the government has announced plans for primary schools to reopen from the 1st of June. Now, this decision has faced a lot of opposition from parents and teachers, but it appears to be one of the government's plans to help the UK get out of lockdown. A survey was conducted by the Teachers Union and 29,000 teachers took part, and 1 in 20 believed that it was safe for pupils to go back to school next month. Cultural Secretary Oliver Dowden said that this move will only go ahead if the government can be sure that children will be safe. He also wants all schools in England to go back at the same time. But the question is June too soon? Are teachers and parents ready? In this episode, I'll be facilitating a discussion to talk about teaching and parenting during COVID-19. So stay tuned.
Joining the discussion today, we have Kanayo. So Kanayo, you're a head of psychology and leading practitioner at a school in Bromley. We have Wonu, who you're an assistant head teacher and head of English in a school in East London. And we have Anna, a former BBC and TV journalist who's the founder of Brees Media.
That's right.
A company that focuses on helping you create great video content. Let's start by talking about teaching during lockdown. So Wonu and Kanayo specifically, what type of support have you been giving to pupils or your pupils during lockdown?
Yeah, so in terms of support, I think the basics has been providing lessons virtually. And the shape of those lessons take the form of uploading worksheets or doing a voiceover over a PowerPoint. In addition to that, like I shared this morning, I've been calling home for some students who have struggled with accessing work or completing work and finding out what the case is for them. So it ranges. So baseline is ensuring that they're continuing their education, continuing their learning at home. And then the second part is following up for those who haven't been able to access the work for whatever reason and providing adjustments for them. For some students, they can't share a laptop with their siblings, so they literally need you to post the work booklet or the worksheets that you've uploaded. They need you to post a printout of the PowerPoints. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah,
I think pretty much the same as you, Kanayo. So we've uploaded all of our lessons, and we obviously had to kind of change the way that we approached the curriculum, just because there's some things that you can't make up for if you're just not in a classroom. For example, having conversations, things like think, pair, shares, which is just getting the kids to discuss things independently without your input. So we've had to kind of think creatively in terms of how we do approach the curriculum to make sure that actually they're at home, they are learning. But at the same time, we totally take into consideration that some of them, like you said, are sharing resources, sharing laptops. We've have students who are sharing, there's one laptop in the family full stop, so they're having to wait for a particular time to use that. As a school, having a whole school approach to contacting parents, because obviously if every teacher is contacting a parent saying your child hasn't done this piece, your child hasn't done that piece, that can be quite overwhelming for parents as well. So contacting parents, and then for those of us that are like in senior or middle management, also taking care of your team. So checking in with your team or those that you line manage. So that often is part of your week.
Well, I'm not too sure if you agree. I do feel like during this period, teachers are actually working slightly more than, I think it's a little bit more taxing than if you are in school and you have like set times for, you know, contacting home, set times for your lessons. I do feel like teaching from home is tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I was saying to a colleague yesterday that because I've been going in once a week on a rota, and I was in yesterday and I was saying actually it's quite nice to be in school. I like coming in for the format of school, because sometimes when you're at home, just having those boundaries of, you know, if you were at school, this would be break time.
And how, Anna, for you as a mother, homeschooling, how has that element of homeschooling, how has that been?
Well, this is difficult for me because I don't know whether to answer this as a parent or as a journalist. As a parent, I'm self-employed. I'm a single parent with 3 children, ages of 6, 8 and 11. And I'm finding it incredibly difficult. I'm not entitled to any of the government schemes, sort of compensation for work that I've lost, and I've lost 60% of my income. I've seen the children do sort of an hour a day of work, and the rest of the time they're playing Fortnite and they've put on weight. And I think they really enjoyed not going to school for the first 3 weeks. I think we could manage. It was absolutely fine. But after those 3-4 weeks, and now we're where we're at now, I'm seeing them suffer. I am seeing them suffer. And I have a lovely big house, big garden. I live by the sea. I've got some support. Their dad sees them. And I do honestly really, really worry, because if I'm struggling and they're struggling right now, what about people that don't have any family support and they're with their children all day? They don't have any money. They may have lost their jobs, and they may have more children than me, and they may not have a garden. Yeah. That's what I'm worried about. That's me as a parent talking there. And I know here in Wales, we've got no date. And if we had a date, even if it was like the middle of June, I know in England, it's the 1st of June. If we just had a date, I would feel that there was some hope, something to attach ourselves to look forward to talk to the children about. You know, or we've got 2 weeks left, or how many sleeps. You know what children are like. People need that. So that's where I'm at.
So, especially when you talk about the dates, there has been a discussion about whether it was right to say or to believe that all schools should go back, or primary schools should go back on the 1st of June. Specifically with the teachers, do you think that is right, that every school should adhere to a specific date, even if they are not ready to go back?
No.
Not at all.
In a nutshell, no. I think the issue is really complex, and I actually really appreciate it's actually, as much as a teacher, I think I can completely empathize with how parents are dealing with it, because we have contact with parents, but I think it's always different to hear from someone that's actually at home with 3 kids and saying, you know, the novelty wears off after a few weeks. And as much as I think it is really important to get kids back in school as soon as possible, but actually it's as soon as it's safe. And I think that's been my biggest issue, is an announcement of a date, not taking into consideration different contexts around the country, around the countries. So, for example, you might have, in some places there's a lot, the rate of infection is a lot lower, the rate and the death toll is a lot lower. If that's the case, and then maybe you need to reevaluate what you're going to do for that particular area. But to say for everybody to go back on the 1st, I think it puts a ridiculous amount of pressure, particularly in areas that have the highest. Like, I work in the borough that has the highest number of deaths by COVID. Also an area that has a high proportion of people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and we know that is the group that are most significantly hit at the moment. That's really scary to think that these kids are coming back knowing that they are the most vulnerable.
The government have said it's safe, but they're happy for the world to come alive again, for the country to start working again. Do you think they're doing it because they're putting the economy before children's safety? Because I've not been following all of the mainstream media kind of narrative on the virus, and I'm more going towards the herd immunity. That's my personal feeling, that herd immunity is the best way forward. So I have a different view. But do you think the government have forced this because of the economy, or rather than that they've said people can't, the teachers and the schools say, well, the government has said it's safe, so it's safe. Let's go back to school on the first.
100%. That's exactly what they're doing. I think, we have to make comparisons between what they're saying for state schools and what private schools are doing. So private schools have shut their doors until September. Cambridge University announced just this week that all of their lectures are moving to an online mode until summer 2021. And it makes us feel, as state school teachers, I'm assuming, Wonu, that you teach in a state school, it makes us feel that, all of a sudden, they know something that we don't know. If it's okay to close their schools till September, and it's okay to close Cambridge University until summer 2021, there must be something that they know that we don't know about this coronavirus. And as much as they're saying, children, they're less likely to become infected by it, there's a neglect about the children coming into contact with the adults at home, with elderly grandparents, with the teachers who have underlying health issues. So for myself, I have underlying health issues. There is no way that I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm almost tempting death to come and collect me. So I think the government, another thing that they've done, which I completely Gavin has been getting on my nerves, is he will make an announcement as if he's spoken to schools prior. So announcing June 1st, many head teachers of primary schools said, we were not consulted on it. So how can we prepare, to reopen on the 1st of June? You think about the shared resources that children use, the shared resources that teachers use, photocopiers, computers, pens, corridors. There's so much to think about. But he just thought, let me make a blanket statement and make it out to be that, teachers need to be the heroes. They need to be the champions. We've been being the heroes. And I think that's one thing that the government have forgotten, and they've almost substituted schools for a babysitting service. We need schools to reopen so that the working class and those who are unable to work at the moment can get back to building our economy. But actually, we need our children to live, and we need our teachers to be alive.
No, I don't think the risk is really there. I really don't think the risk is. I think people are very scared. And if you actually look at countries that didn't even have lockdown, the death rates are low, and it tends to be those that have already have underlying health conditions, are very, very elderly. And I think that the risk has been over-egged in the mainstream media, and I really don't think that we're going to see the kind of deaths, the 500,000 that were quoted at the beginning. That's because of my media source, the information that I get. I do not think that you guys are at as much risk as you think. I've looked at the Office of National Statistics figures for deaths of children, and they're incredibly low. What concerns me is the vulnerable children that are at home right now and how they are really, really suffering. And you've got things like, they're being shouted at, they're being hit, their parents are drinking, they've got maybe not even any food. This is really, for me, the risk for me now. This is what I'm very concerned about. And it's good to see, for example, here in Wales, the Children's Commissioner for Wales has actually put together a survey for children to talk about how they're feeling. So that'll end on the 27th of May. But like I said, I'm struggling, okay? And I've got a lot of help, and I've got, lots of space. I know children are suffering. I just know they are. And I know they're suffering more than being out of school and going into school. And I'll put, I'm quite happy to say that and come out and say that. I really do honestly believe that.
We've spoken a lot about, because we've spoken a lot about the teachers, the children, but Kanayo actually made an interesting point looking at teachers with underlying health issues as well, because yes, they can put procedures. There's various things they're saying about splitting the classroom size from 30 to 15 and, creating different times for children to come in. But what about the teachers as well who are at risk, that have people at home that are at risk? What do you think about the safety precautions that are going to be put forward for teachers?
sometimes the rhetoric seems to be that teachers don't care about about those kids. Not to say that that's what you're suggesting, but I think sometimes there is this rhetoric, this underlying rhetoric that, oh, teachers are being selfish and they're prioritizing themselves, and they're not thinking about those vulnerable kids. And actually, those kids are the first group of children we thought about as soon as school ended. How are we going to make contact with these kids? How let's set up so we call those vulnerable kids on a weekly basis. They're visited on a weekly basis, even just a knock on the door to say, hi, you see my face, how is everything going? So those things are being put in place. But I think even though it seems that okay, it's only a certain sector of society that are affected, unfortunately there still are anomalies. I had a family member, 27, very healthy, died of corona last week. We can't, as much as we can say it's a certain group of society, it is still happening to a number of people who shouldn't fit into that most vulnerable category. And I think that is the thing that puts fear into many teachers, just like it puts fear to many people who are still refusing to send their children to school even if schools do open, because they fear that actually it's the fear of the unknown ultimately, isn't it? And I think it's really, I think it's really difficult at the moment to make that decision, which is why I'm kind of glad I don't work for the government in that sense. But it is a really difficult decision to make because you have to choose a particular sector of society to prioritise. Unfortunately, because there's not been enough consultation, I think, with teachers, with the frontline staff that they keep hailing, but are not providing the PPE equipment they need in order for them to feel comfortable going out to serve the country. It is becoming quite divisive, and it does feel like, okay, you want us to go back to school so that we can babysit kids, so that kids can go, so that parents can go out to work. And ultimately, of course they do. Of course they do, because they don't want there to be an economic crash, even though it seems like there will be. But it's still making sure that all of these things are put in place to make people feel reassured about going back to work. Because the average Joe doesn't know that really and truly the figures are not what they seem in the papers. The average Joe is picking up the newspaper and saying, oh my gosh, look at this incredibly provocative headline. That's it. I'm not going out. I'm not sending this is what happened. This is what's happening. I'm not sending my kids to school, or teachers need to get back in the classroom.
Kanayo, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I totally agree with Wonu. There was the press conference that Gavin Williamsons led, and it was very much, teachers, we need you to do your part. We need you to be the heroes. And I kind of felt like it was an indirect hint that teachers are doing nothing. So we're not working. We're just at home. We're not doing anything. And I think it's totally incorrect for him and perhaps the general public to assume that teachers are doing absolutely nothing at home. And I just echo what Wonu says, that we want the best for our students. We want the very best for them academically, but also socially and emotionally. But some of these inequalities that exist, they're not an issue of schools, neither are they an issue of teachers. The root issue comes with funding for particular areas. The root issue comes with the fact that actually, you think about Jeremy Corbyn, he when he was running for what was he running for? Leader of the Labour Party. He said, yeah, we want there to be free broadband for all homes. And people just looked at it and thought, oh, he's so silly. Why would we need free broadband? But we're looking at the situation that we're in now. And actually, broadband and internet is not a luxury. It's an essential utility. So things like that. So I think schools have been given a position whereby we're seen to breach the inequality gap. But actually, we can't do that if homes don't have the resources that they need. If children don't have the resources that they need. And I really do sympathise with those students who are in difficult positions at home. But what I do wish is that the government don't use what is meant for literally championing the education of students as the ultimate tool, the ultimate solution for social justice and inequality. Schools aren't that. We can't do it.
In Germany, they actually decided to allow the older years, so I think 10 and 11, to actually go back due to the equivalent of the A-levels that they wanted to complete. Obviously, in the UK, they've said they cancelled GCSEs, A-levels until next year. Do you think that was the right decision for them to cancel it? Specifically, I mean, even Anna, it would be great to hear, based on that decision, what you think. But I know that both Kanayo and Wonu teach older years as well. What do you all think about that decision?
I did my master's in educational assessment, and my doctorate is focused on educational assessment. I do believe that cancelling exams, so GCSEs, A-levels, SATs for this year was the right decision to make. And I also shared that it's interesting to see now this reliance, this fallback on teacher assessment. It's almost like teachers are now being afforded the trust, the autonomy that they've been fighting for quite a long time, because no other person knows their students best than a teacher. However, I do recognise that relying on calculated grades, which come from teachers and of course the students' prior attainment and ranking and all these different statistical measures, I do appreciate that there will be some students who unfortunately will be at a disadvantage by that. There's been a lot of talk of, BAME students are more likely to be under-predicted in terms of their grades, and we appreciate that. But the good thing to know is that they do use prior attainment. We are using the fact that we can rank our students in a particular order and use the different statistical measures, and they do have the opportunity to resit those exams if they're not confident with the calculated grade that's been provided for them. But I think it's been the correct decision to make. Yeah.
I think I'd agree. I think they had to cancel exams because of the uncertainty of when the pandemic would end, and we still don't know. So I think it was the right decision. I think the difficulty we had is essentially when they cancelled the exams, they didn't actually announce what their contingency was in place of the fact that these children would not be sitting their exams this year, and they wouldn't be awarded in the way that they had traditionally been awarded. And I think for teachers and for students, if you're a year 6 student, a year 11 student, a year 13 student, the anxiety that you must have felt just to know, okay, there's no exams, what exactly is happening? And then also for teachers, a lot of pressure to think, okay, am I determining these grades that we know could possibly affect this child for the rest of their life? I think it was quite scary, and I just finished our ranking process last week, and it was a task. And also you want to make sure that you're giving the fairest judgment. I think it's helpful that we know that, you know, it's not just the grade that the teacher has given. There's a whole other kind of method to how they'll eventually award. But ultimately, it's not a fair process. It's fair for them to cancel it, but it isn't. It isn't a fair process, because those children are never going to understand what it's like to actually sit those exams, and they're never going to be able to determine this is what I got under these circumstances.
Okay. Anna, so in Denmark and Germany, when they started to reopen schools, there was a lot of fear about backlash from the parents, which they've actually realised for a lot of the time it hasn't materialised. Do you think that that's what's going to happen in June, after a couple of months, that the fears that a lot of parents have won't actually materialise?
Fear. We got to keep thinking about fear and reality. I was in the Tesco's yesterday and saw one of the front pages, and it was front page of the Mail, I think it was, and it said that those fears haven't materialised, that people have gone back to school in these European countries, and a month later there's been no increase in the number of deaths and any big impacts. So I think we need a government and a media that we can really trust. I do genuinely believe in herd immunity, and that we isolate those that are at risk. For example, my lodger's a 65-year-old teacher, and he's not going to do any work as a key worker in school. Anyone who's at a greater risk must be kept indoors and protected and receive full pay. But I definitely believe that children are suffering, and there's no PR and communications agencies for children. There's no one representing, there's no union for children. Children don't have a voice here, and there is no voice on mainstream media or social media for those children. So if, you know, they are really, really scared or struggling, and anxiety as well. I mean, the longer this goes on, the more they get used to a routine of not going to school and they're not socialising. And even I'm scared. So I know children will pick up on that. But that's how we get our news. That's how we get the media, is from communications and PR agencies. We certainly don't get it from listening to single parents of 5 children living in a block of flats. They don't have a voice. And they're not usually vulnerable enough to even voice that on social media. So that's where I'm coming from. That's very, very clearly how I feel about this. We've got to get out of this. And I do believe herd immunity is the route. And I think we need a stronger media and a government that we trust.
I think you're totally right. I think what has emerged from this season of lockdown is just how little the British public do trust the media. And I think actually that is part of the reason why there are quite polarized opinions in terms of what should happen next. And I think it's really unfortunate as well, because this is the main thing. Some people don't even watch the news, they go on Twitter. And Twitter, as you know, is an echo chamber. You know, you follow the people that you want to follow because you want to hear the opinions.
Yeah, and unregulated news as well.
And if you just think how kind of lawless that sphere is, and the fact that for some people this is the sole way that they get their information. Some people only get their information through WhatsApp chains, and the fact that someone's forwarded them something but don't go and verify it. And actually I think that does help to fuel this kind of mass, I don't want to say hysteria, but just mass paranoia and anxiety around how you should feel about going back. And I think some people haven't actually investigated how they do really feel. They're kind of being told they should feel a certain way because they ascribe to a particular political ideology. So I think it's definitely helpful, the comments that you made about the fact that, you know, kids don't have someone that's advocating for them. We'd like to think we are trying to advocate for them by advocating for ourselves. But I do also understand that, you know, we aren't necessarily hearing from those families. And if we do hear from those families, oftentimes is a narrative that we feel supports the narrative that the government want to put out. And that sometimes isn't always in the best interest of the people that are necessarily on the front line. So.
And I think, Anna, you raised a good point about, you know, what support will be put in place for students when they do return back to school, in terms of making those routine adjustments from having not been in school for, how many weeks has it been now? It's been almost, I can't keep up. I don't know whether we're in the 8th week, but it's been such a long time. So helping them to readjust back to the routine of returning to school, but also the psychological impact of literally being excluded from society, only staying at home, no communication with your peers and so on. So it will be interesting to know whether the government lend any thought to not just having the logistical structures in place, so have hand sanitizing pumps and water basins everywhere in schools, but actually will there be psychological support provided for these children when they do return to school?
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any closing statements or anything that you want to say really based on the decision that the government is making? I know that I think they have until the 28th of May to discuss with the student union if there are going to be any additional things that will be pushed forward. Do you have anything that you would want to add to that decision?
I think it's just important for people to know that teachers do want to be in the classroom. And we're missing school as much as the students are missing school. I miss my students so much, and I really miss even just, you know, I think it's good to work, full stop, for any human. It's good for the flourishing of humanity to, you know, task yourself with something and feel purposeful and have a sense of accomplishment. So I know that away from teaching, just kind of as Anna has said, you know, losing 60% of your work or your income, that takes a toll on you as a person. Ideally, we want everyone to get back to work, teachers included, but ultimately we want it to be as safe as possible. And, you know, I hope we reach some kind of compromise that is in the best interests of the government and teachers and pupils as well. That's what my hope and prayer is. But I also am very much aware that, you know, someone wins and someone loses oftentimes. And unfortunately, somebody's not going to get what they want. But it's just seeing how that will materialize and what that looks like in the long run. But yeah, teachers want to work. We want to go to school. We want to see our students. Just want to be safe.
We do. My closing remarks, I'm going to just read some comments from my students as we sent them a feedback form to understand how they were coping with home learning and anything that we could do to support. And some of their comments were super encouraging. So I'm going to read one. It says, "Thank you for everything you do. You are both," so this is myself and my other team member, "you are both supportive and amazing teachers. I'm sure we'll all get through this together and achieve great things. I want to thank you both for consistently setting work and tasks that have aided my learning and the learning of us all. Thank you for also being supportive during this time and encouraging me to continue to work hard. So I think that, and these are from older students, of course, and I guess they have a greater understanding of what is going on, but they are appreciative of teachers, and teachers are working hard. We do want the best for our students, and with the same optimism and enthusiasm that they have for returning to school, we also share the same sentiments, but we want to return to school when it is safe for both students and teachers.
Okay, thank you. Anna?
I've really enjoyed this discussion, and looking at you lovely smiley faces, because I've missed talking to people and it feels like I am. So I mean, I have nothing really more to add in that. My concerns and the work that I've been doing, and I understand what you were saying, Wonu, about confirmation bias and Twitter and echo chambers. There's been an increase of censorship and numerous, probably a dozen medical professionals advocating herd immunity. So that's really my concern. I don't think it's an issue of not being safe to go back to school. I think we have to get this herd immunity, and that's just my opinion. I know other people can disagree with that, you know, and that's all I can say really. It's about being safe. It's about children being safe. And like you say, at the moment, I don't think they are as safe as they would be back in school.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope that this helps give an insight on the different perspectives of the people that are going through teaching and living with children during COVID. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.